When I bet, I like getting something back, win or lose. That's why we're excited to announce our new partnership with Fanatic Sportsbook. It's the only sportsbook that gives you fan cash when you bet, win or lose. Use fan cash on all Knicks, NBA, or other fan gear, as well as bonus bets, collectibles, and more. It's the most rewarding place for fans to place their bets. Download the Fanatic Sportsbook app now and let the fan cash flow. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut residents, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts residents, call 800-327-5050. New York residents, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland residents, visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
All right. Welcome to the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by Fanatic Sportsbook. I am Jonathan Macri, once again joined by my buddy DJ Zullo, who I'm very happy to have here to talk this one through with, and we will start to do that in a moment. I will just open by saying, needless to say, very different tenor from the last post game a couple of days ago. This loss was hard. This loss was hard, I would say, for three reasons. It was hard because your process as a team, I think if you are the Knicks, you look at how they went about this game in general, certainly on the offensive end, and you have some significant questions about that, which we will talk about. I think you look at the execution at times, putting the process aside and looking at how the Knicks actually went about doing what they did. And I think there was a bit to be desired there. And then on top of all that, in a game you did not deserve to win. You did not deserve to be in this game because of the issues with the process and with the execution. But you were in it at the end, despite all of that. And the Knicks, look, they deserve credit for getting back into the game in the fourth quarter. That is a bit of a silver lining. We'll talk about the comeback that almost was. But I don't know how many more games you are ever going to get where you play a team that, I know they're not a great shooting team, but they're a mediocre shooting team. And they gave it to you on a silver platter in terms of missing everything from three. And you had it at the end. You had a chance. You gave yourself a chance and you could not take advantage. So this game, for as much as it was a game that the Knicks did not deserve to win, and that maybe should make it feel better in some ways, it was almost like three losses in one. And we're going to get into the biggest X's and O's stuff in a second, starting with a certain center. But before we do, I will just turn it to DJ and ask, what are your initial impressions?
Yeah, I thought you encompassed it really well there. The Pistons came out in a way which I guess we all should have foreseen. The Knicks should have foreseen it in terms of their aggression, their physicality. The Knicks didn't respond great to it, and it's sort of a microcosm of what our biggest criticism of this team has been throughout the year. Now, as you mentioned, to the Knicks' credit, they flipped that in the second half and then in the fourth quarter, specifically in terms of matching or even exceeding Detroit's aggression. But the way the Pistons sort of attacked the Knicks, and we'll get into it, disallowed the Knicks to defend the way they did in game one. And listen, the Knicks have the talent advantage on paper, but that is in a vacuum and doesn't have, physical, strong, athletic, young, hungry players taking you out of everything you want to do. And I thought the free throw stuff was a little overblown, but is part of the equation here. But listen, this is a Piston team I thought was going to take the Knicks to the brink in this series. I thought this was going to go 7. I haven't shifted off that. Didn't shift off that after game one. They do things physically that take the Knicks out of their comfort zones. And because the Knicks aren't blessed with the sort of ball handlers outside of Jalen Brunson to attack that sort of aggressive defense, it can lend itself to where the Knicks look like they're moving and stuck in mud and just aren't providing any sort of counter to the way the Pistons are defending. I think that's where some of the deficiencies of the Knicks lie. But this was a tough one. It's a tough one to swallow. It's a tough one because of the Knicks getting back in the game. Just as a fan watching it, it seemed like the Pistons were unraveling. Yeah. And of course, there's always a guy that you don't think about. It was campaign in game one, Dennis Schroeder here in game two.
Yeah, I mean, role players win playoff games. Mm-hmm. So let's stick with the story of the game. I think for like most fans is going to be the physicality, and I'm curious. I think there's going to be a diversity of opinions on that. I think there will be some people that latch on to the free throw discrepancy, which the way I think you characterized it or we characterized it in the first half, which is that the Knicks, there were calls the Knicks could have gotten that they didn't seem like they got any of them. Whereas the calls that the Pistons were getting, I think it was easy to complain because the Knicks weren't getting any calls, but you looked at a lot of those calls and as you were calling them out, as they were happening, a lot of them were fouls. That said, in the fourth quarter, those tables turned and the Knicks started getting a lot of calls. And, I think the more interesting aspect of the physicality stuff to me is how New York allowed that approach to take them out of their game. And part of that is, as you just said, the fact that the Knicks do not have another traditional advantage creator on the roster besides Jalen Brunson in terms of an off the dribble advantage creator. And this is the part that I like, and this is going to lead right into the Towns stuff because I think the Towns part of it is the biggest X's and O's thing. They were not doubling Brunson, right? In this game?
Yeah. No, they played him straight up. And then so Brunson at that point either had two choices. It was, okay, I'm going to either shoot it or try to draw contact, which he obviously tried very hard to do and seemed to take great pleasure in finally fouling Asar Thompson out, which I thought that was a fascinating reaction from him. Or pass it back out. And when he did, you always talk, DJ, about winning the closeout. And how many closeouts did the Pistons win in this game? Like all of them. Yeah. Almost all of them. And part of that is Brunson getting into the paint, but not getting into the deep paint where your rotations are then going to be longer. So him getting into the non-restricted area paint zone and then spraying the ball out, that closeout is going to be much cleaner, much easier for your rotation, for your help defense. Yep. And I think that's where, if you boil it down to one thing, process this. Like, think back to that game. How many times did Jalen Brunson or any Knick really in a half-court setting get to the deep paint and cause a rotation? It happened a handful of times, but not enough to make the Pistons pay for how they were defending, which was showing immense amount of bodies at Jalen Brunson. The Josh Hart piece of it, just to get ahead of it, is part of the equation there. Now, it's a complex equation because, listen, there was moments in that game where Josh Hart was the only Knick matching or even sometimes exceeding how Detroit was playing that basketball game in terms of the aggression, the effort, and the energy. So you can take Josh Hart out of the game, and I think you would have a valid basketball reason for saying that. But just be honest with yourself and just acknowledge the trade-offs that would bring to the table. So and that's one thing. Yeah. So Josh Hart being there makes it easier, but again, you could have generated other aspects, I think, and then maybe we can sort of transition into the Towns piece of it. Yeah. He is the only other option there to provide some sort of gravitational source on the ball, and it just wasn't honed in on enough. That is, as you said it on playback, that's a top-down issue from the coach to the point guard to Towns himself. Yes. You can't allow him to not be a factor in that basketball game.
So I didn't even realize this. We didn't even realize this in the moment. Fred Katz tweeted it out, and credit to him for doing so. Karl-Anthony Towns played the entire fourth quarter. He did not take a shot in the fourth quarter. The last shot he took came with 5 minutes and 20 seconds to go in the third. That is, I don't know if like the right terminology is like that is unacceptable, but it like it's like you can't have Karl-Anthony Towns on your basketball team. And like, you could even go back to game one because he took 14 shots in game one. I think he was 10 of 14.
10 of 14, yeah.
So that means Jalen Brunson took more shots in this basketball game than Karl-Anthony Towns has taken in the first 2 games combined, because Towns tonight took 11 shots. And tonight, Jalen Brunson took 27 shots. 27 is more than 25. I don't really know what to do with that fully, because as I mentioned, and as you just said, it's on everybody, which is like, okay, great. Now, how do you fix it? Like, were there some possessions and some shots that Jalen Brunson probably shouldn't have taken where he would have been better served kicking the ball back out? Yeah, there were a few, but we also saw a bunch of possessions where Jalen Brunson did put the ball in the hands of his surrounding talented players, and nothing happened. So then you could go to the coach to like draw up some more stuff, and I guess that's where we have to land, right?
I think so. Well, it to me, the fourth quarter is going to be like it's going to be the shining, like red flashing light of alarm bells. But to me, it's a full game issue. So in the fourth quarter, I mean, Brunson did have it going to the point where I can understand, him creating was at that point your best option, because you haven't developed anything within the game to get Towns some looks, right? No. So I think at that point you're like, how do we just win this one? Let's figure out the Towns issue games 3 and on. So here's the issue. Karl Towns, and we saw it in game 1 when he took shots, he has an advantage every time he's on the floor, not just because he's better than the centers, it's because Tobias Harris is spending a hell of a lot of time guarding him. Yeah. So if that is what the Pistons are allowing and gifting you in a sense, then you have to take advantage of that. And he did have a few post-ups, and I can, talk about the complexity here is that he is not, Karl Towns is, he's not a good passer out of a double team in the post, and they were doubling him.
Yeah.
So that does provide, some things to be concerned about, but still you have to push that button a little more to try to juice your offense quarters 1 through 3, knowing it's probably going to be more of a Jalen Brunson show in the fourth quarter anyway in a close game, but you've got to get more out of Towns. To me, it's probably more on the head coach, but also like, the point guard, the guy that controls the basketball. And he not acknowledged that in the Cleveland game, first game of the year, when Towns had 5 or 6 shots in the game,
7 or something
7 maybe under 10. Yeah. Said after the game, it's on me. And so that is also part of the situation here. This has been at times a season-long conundrum for the Knicks, how to get Towns properly involved in things, especially with the wing guarding him. We saw it in the Boston game, in the third Boston meeting, where Towns was very effective scoring the basketball in the post against their wings. I don't understand why that wasn't more of a focal point, especially knowing that was the game plan in game 1. You were ready and willing, theoretically, you should have been in game 2 to take advantage of that.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. Look, did Towns have some opportunities that he didn't convert? Yeah, there was a really easy look over Tobias Harris, like at the rim, basically, that he missed. But we also saw, there was like literally just one post up that I could remember that was really good. That was a true post up opportunity that he converted in for a nice little jump hook, and it looked so easy. And it's like, where is that the rest of the game?
Yeah. And listen, real quick, just specific on that one, the Pistons are doubling from the baseline. So Tobias Harris, his whole motive is what they call 3/4 front, where you're not full front in front of Towns, but you're pushing him to the baseline. That's where you want Towns to go. And he was playing high on Towns' left shoulder. Towns just goes through that shoulder into the middle where Harris is trying to prevent him to go to, and is able to drop in a jump hook. And I said, we both said it, that looked easy. Why can't that, despite the fact that they are sending help from the baseline, why can't you continue to push that button, knowing you have such a physical size advantage on that matchup? And that was the matchup almost the entire game.
Yep.
That's the frustrating part, because we saw an example of how good it can look, and they just went away from it.
And I think part of it is, and I don't mean to keep going around in circles, but like the Pistons did an excellent job of just showing bodies all the time. And the Knicks never really made Detroit pay for playing off of the rest of their offensive players. Like I'm certainly not going to sit here and complain about the Knicks' lack of shooting when the Pistons had a much worse shooting game. The Pistons were 6 of 27 from 3 for 22%. The Knicks were 10 of 35 for 28%. But the reality of the situation is like the Knicks should be a better shooting team than the Detroit Pistons. Like they start Asar Thompson, who is a non-shooter. They start a center who is a non-shooter. Tim Hardaway Jr. is inconsistent. He's not usually this bad, but he was very bad tonight. Tobias Harris, like he was 1 of 4 tonight. It's like, all right, well, that's kind of par for the course with Tobias Harris. Like he's going to go 1 of 4 a lot. The one guy who hit shots for them from the outside was Dennis Schroeder, including the biggest shot of the game, which, Jalen Brunson obviously should have stepped up there, and that's on him. But you get, Malik Beasley went 1 for 8. But like, if you're the Knicks, no, it's not good enough to go 3 of 11 if you're Mikal Bridges. And maybe, we've been talking for 17 minutes here, and I do this sometimes where we get into the meat and potatoes and we ignore the, I don't know what the analogy would be here. I don't know, the dead rat on the table. And I feel bad saying that because Mikal Bridges, I thought, on the whole, played a really nice game. Like he did a lot of good things out there for the first however many minutes. But sometimes you just got to hit your shots, man. And I feel like I would be surprised if, despite the fact that there's a lot of X's and O's stuff to get into with this game, the vast majority of the Super Chat comments are not going to be concerning Mikal Bridges and kind of an unleashing of a season's worth of frustrations on this player who ended the game 19 points, 18 shots, 3 of 11 from 3. Now look, OG Anunoby missed all 4 of his threes, only took 4, notably. Towns, we talked about a little bit, only took 2 threes. We talked about Hart, McBride was the only guy who shot it for the Knicks. So I don't know what else there is to say about Bridges. It was a frustrating end of the night for him. And if fans are frustrated with him tonight, what do you say? What am I supposed to say? Like you're being unfair? No,
Well, listen, it's tough when you go 0 for 4 in the fourth quarter and you miss a wide open,
multiple wide open looks.
Yeah, multiple, and then the one glaring miss. I thought for a lot of that game, he and you alluded to it. I thought he played well. I think it would. I do think personally it would be unfair to sort of not pin this on him or have him take maybe a brunt of the criticism based on.
But he will.
But he absolutely will. Now, listen, you mentioned Anunoby missing all his threes, and then his primary matchup, the guy that we all talked about how well he defended. And I think the Pistons deserve credit to make life harder on Anunoby, but Cade Cunningham had a really nice night.
Oh, Cade was great. 33 points on 21 shots.
Yeah. Only had 5 assists, so I think that's the
three
sort of aspect. They stayed home a lot of that, but
yeah.
I thought Bridges had a really tough night. There was the one we both mentioned it, the isolation, almost like semi-transition against Harris, where, like you said, he didn't go into the body, he tried to finesse around on the reverse, sort of a microcosm of his allergic reaction sometimes to seeking contact.
Yep.
That was tough. I thought Bridges, though, defended really well. So I really hope this isn't going to be felt like it's a Bridges loss here, because I think if you look back at this one, you're going to look at some really high level defense, especially against some of those shooters. But he does deserve criticism for going 3 of 11 from 3, and they needed 1 or 2 more of those to go down. He didn't make them, and just one. Yeah. I know Brunson only goes 4 of 12, but he got to the line, so the final stat sheet doesn't look terrible in terms of the efficiency, but I think a lot of the players deserve some blame. I think you can honestly look at Josh Hart and say like the lack of spacing outweighs the negative there outweighs what he's providing on the offensive end as an offensive rebounder and his grit and everything. I get that. I thought, the Pistons, the way that they were not bringing the center in the action. So Towns and Robinson weren't able to impact and support OG Anunoby as much in game 2 because of the Pistons going away from that. So I talked about even on the film session over on Patreon, it wasn't just Anunoby, it was the support that he had, especially Robinson and Towns.
Yep.
They were very rarely involved in the ball screen action when they ran it. And that was another thing. They didn't run a ton of it with Cunningham. So the Pistons made really nice adjustments to get their best player into some more advantageous situations. And Anunoby struggled containing the basketball against Cade Cunningham. So, shout out, Cade. He played like an all NBA caliber guy. And, this series has all the makings of a long one, but there are some things here that the Knicks are really going to have to clean up. I think it has to start with Towns, but he certainly isn't the only one.
Cade was the best player on the floor tonight. It wasn't particularly close. I understand Brunson scored 37 points and he deserves credit for that, but Cade was incredible. So many big shots, and a lot of correct decisions. And again, the assist number was low, but how much of that was the fact that the Pistons couldn't buy a bucket? And I agree with you. OG, not a stellar defensive game from him. Bridges, a couple of times he got matched up on Cade, did not necessarily go well. They did a good job bringing Brunson into the action and taking advantage of that. They made a lot of adjustments, and now I guess maybe, I'll let you talk about anything else that you want to talk about before you get out of here and turn me over to the Wolves. But hey, the last thing that I just want to hit is like, so you're the Knicks and you're the head coach of the Knicks. What's your adjustment now going into game 3? Because this is absolutely a series now, and you better find a way to win one of these next 2 games. That's for shit sure.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot here in terms of like what Tibbs can sort of do to manage this. I think you have to, the play better, push to play better button, I feel like is where my head is first and foremost.
In what area specifically?
Well, too many Cade Cunningham drives to the right hand. And that to me, especially second half, if you're Anunoby, you have to be a little better, making sure that you are shading him to his left hand. Now listen, Cade was attacking early and the screens were being sent, it seemed like, closer to half court. So that's a tougher area to navigate in terms of the space that you have to manage if you're Anunoby, but it's too much of that. We talked about Towns being more of a focal point offensively. Then I think you do have to at least give you got to give a better look to like whether it's McBride or Shamet or Payne. Like, was the balance in terms of the lineup construction? Did Tibbs lose the balance because he was so worried? And I get it, about matching the physical nature of what that game was, that he probably felt like Shamet, Payne specifically weren't going to cut it in this one. But did he, in doing so, put so much pressure on Brunson specifically, and even, Bridges and Anunoby, to create in a half court setting when it was so easy to load up, help, and show bodies? And I think that's where you have to go back and say, maybe we didn't strike the right balance. I think that, Josh Hart played 40 minutes.
40 minutes. I just looked it up. Yep.
So that's where I thought he was required to be a big part of that game. Probably not 40 minutes worth. And that's where I talk about the balance of it.
Yeah. I think that's all true. I wonder about the ramifications of this one. Obviously, it's going to depend on what they do down in Detroit, but you got to figure. Well, I mean, I would assume the Pistons are going to win one of those games. Obviously, we hope they don't win both. But, so then it's like, all right, it's a 3-game series. A lot could happen in a 3-game series. And if the Knicks do win this in 7 even, and I said after game 1, I'm like, if I could change my pick from Knicks in 6 to Knicks in 5, I probably would. Now, if I could change my pick, I'd probably go Knicks in 7. Obviously, I'm all over the place.
There's one more thing, and
sure,
I think the Knicks Brunson specifically is getting wrapped up with this, looking at the referees every time he's bringing the ball up the court, whether it's Schroeder or Sar Thompson. He is so wrapped up mentally in the fact that he feels like he's getting fouled on every single time he's bringing the ball up the court that I think he's you talk about balance. I don't think he's balanced right now in terms of like how he's operating.
Nope.
So maybe that, your mind can only like sort of process a set amount of things. Maybe that's taking him out of the full ability to see everything, and including Towns, including getting his teammates involved in a more efficient way. So I would just say to him, like, just eliminate that stuff from your mindset, because it's so clear that is all he is processing at times. And that's why he was raising the 6 fingers in the air, even though they were down 6 at the time when Asar Thompson fouled out. It's too much. And I think he needs to back off that a little bit.
That it was so clear that it had gotten in his head. But when he did that, I mean, it was probably already clear. When he did that, oh my God, it was so painfully clear that is what this game had become about for him. Mm-hmm. And you just saw the head coach on the podium apparently went on some kind of monologue of his own about the refs and everything. And like, look, that's what you have to do as the coach. I get it. But that's not what, if that's what this series becomes about, then the Pistons, that's just such a big win for the Pistons, because
huge,
you should, we keep saying it. I know we give all the caveats. You are more talented than this basketball team. You are. And you should be better coached than this basketball team. And your best player should be better than the best player on the other basketball team. And I got to tell you, I know you could tell me about numbers and efficiency and whatever else. I just, if I'm sitting here after 2 games and I'm like, I have no idea about anything about any of these players prior to sitting down and watching them from the beginning of game 1 until now, and you ask me what guy would I want on my side for the next 5, I would say Cade Cunningham. And I don't even think it would be a particularly difficult decision. I think I think his process has certainly been better, if not just being better overall. I think that's a good argument that he has.
I think it's the argument was never the best player. It was who's going to be the best player in the series. And that's an open question right now.
And I get
open
it.
Question.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, fans are hearing in what?
No, fans are going to hear me say that. They're going to be like, what are you, fucking on drugs? Mikal Bridges can't hit a goddamn shot. Karl-Anthony Towns can't get an attempt on goal. I'm sure that, again, there is some blame to go, on him. Like OG Anunoby can't make a 3 and was not good defensively. And that is all fair and true. Jalen Brunson is a superhero. I'm a grown man, and he's a superhero in my eyes. And I've never held an athlete to a higher standard, and he has made us collectively believe that a championship might be possible in the next future, which is not something I thought I'd ever say. And so, the standard is insane. It's not a fair standard. Nobody should be held to the standard.
Yeah, and in game 1, he closed brilliantly.
Yep.
And he almost did it again in game 2. When you look at the way that he was able to get to his spots and just himself scoring the basketball and keeping the Knicks attached and then almost pulling them over the finish line, he almost did it again. So I think with all we're saying about how this team is struggling in some areas and how they need to get Towns more involved and Brunson being a big piece of that, he's still basically a guy you can't guard in the fourth quarter of a close basketball game, at least this year.
Yep.
So that's still in these. I have no reason to believe these next however games are left in the series aren't going to be close and hard fought. I still would take him over anyone on the floor in a close game, in a tight game where there's a lot of physical nature and all that. So there's that piece of it. I think that's where I think if you're a Knicks fan, you look at this and say, yeah, we're tied here, but Brunson in a big spot, I still you feel good about. There's still other questions that have to be answered, but that's, to me, I still feel confident in the player making plays and doing the right thing in a big spot, especially when it means getting the ball through the basket.
Yeah, 100%, which is why I tried to couch it with like, if you didn't know anything about these players, before the series started. Look, we'll see what happens the rest of the series. But like you win this game, you go up 2-0, you got a great chance to at least end the series in 5. And now I mean, it could still. Mm-hmm. I'd be very surprised. And this brings up the possibility, the probability of a longer series. Maybe not as much rest ahead of the next series. And you know who is going to be waiting for you probably then. So this was an impactful game. And I struggle to see a scenario where we may not look back at this game, win or lose this series, and say that was the one. That was the one that they had a chance to steal. And there were 18 different things that could have gone differently, maybe should have gone differently, and none of them did. And here we are. Any other thoughts from you before we get to betting and sweating?
Well, the only thing is, if you're Detroit, you're looking at this like we should have won game 1, and we were clearly the better team in game 2.
Oh yeah,
their confidence right now, if it wasn't a 10 out of 10, is going to be there heading into game 3. So that's where it's not just 1-1; it's 1-1 with a team that believes, and they have every reason to believe that they can win the series. So game 3, especially those first 5 minutes in a rabid arena is gonna be huge. So still confident the Knicks are winning this series, but like you said, this loss means in all likelihood like 6 or 7 games.
Yep.
So that's where we're at, and just buckle up, because this one teetered on getting really explosive in terms of the physicality, and I can only imagine it ramping up even hotter heading into game 3.
Yep. Well said. Okay. Let us take a quick break before we get to the super chats to hear from our friends at Fanatics Sportsbook. We are going to review our betting and sweating picks. And again, we are so proud to have and happy to have Fanatics Sportsbook as the presenting sponsor of the Knicks Film School postgame show. So we had 3 picks tonight. I had my own series of picks, which if you want to go back and see how I did, check out the episode of Betting and Sweating that I did with Andrew Claudio beforehand. So Karl-Anthony Towns, at least 24 points by Mensa. That unfortunately is a loss, and not a very close loss either.
No.
Jalen Brunson, 3 or more made threes. That is, of course, from our guy Jeff. What?
That's a win.
That's a win. And then Detroit at New York. Talk about a smart bet from Sean with a W. Under 221.5 points was minus 110. He should have gone way left on the alt line on this one. I don't know what you could have gotten for under 200 total points, but that was the way to go there. And good job by Sean and good job by Jeff. And if the Knicks would have done a good job themselves, it would have been a good job by Mensa. Unfortunately, they did not. So those are our betting sweats, 2 for 3. Betting and sweating picks, 2 for 3, not bad. Again, thank you to Fanatics Sportsbook for being our presenting sponsor. And DJ, reminder, gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, Connecticut residents 1-888 789-7777. Massachusetts residents, 1-800-327-5050. New York residents, 877-8-HOPE-NY. And Maryland residents, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Final thoughts from you, DJ, before we get out of here.
Well, 2 days off. So you have some time here to figure out all those things that we're talking about. I know Tibbs is I did see the comments regarding the officiating. He values the Knicks being a low foul team. So whenever they do foul a lot, he views it always as a slight against his team. And of course, he's very protective of his point guard. So I have no issue with how he's handling that post game. But yeah, this is going to be, if this is why Knicks don't do things easy, and they didn't do things easy last year. They're not going to do things easy this year. So just get accustomed to it, enjoy it, try to have fun with it. But this one certainly is not enjoyable and not fun, but this will be a long, fun series, I think.
Oh man, I don't. It doesn't feel very fun right now.
Not right now, but
Deej, but I agree with you. It should be. It should be a fun series.